Welcome back everybody. If you haven't already seen any of my videos, hello, my name is Shanice. I'm 26 years old and today I'm actually going to talk about my endometriosis journey. Please don't be put off by watching this video because it's going to be about periods. This is important for everybody to know the signs and symptoms so it leaves life a wee bit easier. Endometriosis is not a fatal condition, but it can make you very, very miserable. Endometriosis is actually a condition where the tissue that lines the womb is found outside the womb, in the ovaries, fallopian tubes. They can be literally anywhere. I have seen quite a few articles and different evidence over the internet that this tissue can actually be found anywhere else in the body. Some women actually bleed through their eyes, and that's very rare, but it is possible. The scar tissue can go into the lungs, causing a chronic cough. And the sad thing is about endometriosis is it's not really fully understood yet, so there isn't enough research done to understand. The only way to diagnose definitively is to get a surgery called a laparoscopy, and it's basically keyhole surgery. I had one myself in July past of this year, and I actually had 4 incisions, one through the belly button and one at each side of the pelvic bone and one in the centre. In this video I'm going to talk to you about my story and how it has affected me through my whole life. I suggest go and making a cup of tea for yourself because this video probably will be a long one due to the long story and struggle that I've had with this condition. In January of 2005, that is when I took my first period. It was completely normal anyway, you know, nothing was that strange about it. It was just the start of being a woman, as other people would have called it. About a year later, my sister, her friend and myself actually wanted to go to the cinema, which was only literally about a 5-minute walk from our house. On the way there, my sister had actually noticed that I completely stained through my trousers right down to each knee. I was wearing a light blue denim jean that had like a washed out effect on it, and right down to each knee I was completely saturated in blood. So I got to the cinema and tried to wash it off. It maybe sounded like, oh well, this is your period, why didn't you protect yourself? But the problem was it wasn't actually my period and I just bled for absolutely no reason. I had put this down to being normal, as back then you were told things that were normal, as well as that we didn't have the internet I think for another year, or maybe it was that year and it wasn't something you actually sat and googled. Like, nobody had the information that what we have now. School became a problem. I remember when I was on my period, like, I struggled a lot with pain. I was always very quiet in school, but when it came to that stage, you know, I was very drained, looking very white. Teachers had mentioned that I didn't look well and were concerned, and I was too embarrassed at that stage of my life to turn around and say I'm on my period and I'm in quite a bit of pain. I was sitting in art and I remember getting up from the seat. Thankfully behind me was a sink. When I got up off the chair, my chair was plastered in blood yet again. Thankfully it was the last period of the day, no pun intended. I was able to go home and get my skirt washed, things like that, but it started to become a real inconvenience for me as I wasn't technically on my period. This had just happened sort of out of the blue. Pain started like getting a lot more intense as each period went by. It first started with just a normal, like, light cramping, and it ended up, I could feel it in my left side. Normally most girls say they just feel pain in their lower abdomen area, but the problem was I had only pain on my left side, and I could feel exactly where it was coming from and where it was going to. Like, I remember it always went down into my thigh and right down into my ankle, and it always was there. I never had very many symptoms at the start. The pain was so searing and sore, and I remember it just got worse as time went on. June of 2009, at the time was my boyfriend, now husband, and my now father-in-law. We had actually went over to Stevie's brother's graduation. I remember my period was due. It wasn't something I was really worried about, and I remember during the graduation, you know, I was wearing a dress, all the rest, but like, I knew it was coming, so I had prepared completely. I started to feel so unwell with it, and I started getting worse and worse, and I just sat there and I tried to put up with the pain. I took my painkillers, done everything that I needed to do to prepare. And I said to Stevie, I feel I need to get out of here and go to the toilet or go and get a glass of water to try and calm myself down because I was starting to panic with pain. I remember going out and sitting on the step, and the staff of this building, I can't exactly remember the building it was in London, but the staff, I cannot recommend them enough. They were so nice, so helpful, even male staff. They had brought me bottles of water and they brought me painkillers and they actually offered to ring an ambulance. I was in that much pain. Then thankfully it disappeared after a while and I was able to go back to normal, got the flight home. That was it. May of 2010 was my 18th birthday and we had went out for something to eat. I was quite excited as I was turning 18, technically an adult. I was wearing a pair of white trousers that day and they had like tears in them and they bit flare at the bottom of them. I felt nice, like for my 18th birthday, I felt grown up, all them sorts of things. Before we left, I had went to the bathroom, again, wasn't on my period, and as I went to the toilet I realised that I had completely bled through my white trousers that I was wearing. I started to panic, as you do, you're wearing white trousers, whatever. Went outside, family wanted pictures. I tried to not make it that obvious. We got our family pictures and I went home. It was that night I decided I've had enough of this bleeding in between periods. I need to go and talk to somebody about this. I still have the trousers. I actually was about to get rid of them the other day and decided to keep them because it was the day that I decided that I needed to go and get help from somebody, and it was only the start of the beginning, really. These are the trousers from that day. Don't worry, there's no stains or nothing, but these are the trousers and they have the rips and stuff on them. But I love these trousers. At the time they were really fashionable, really nice trousers. So I'm going to keep these as something that I have to keep, I have to do it. So the following Monday I actually made an appointment, went to the doctor's. She had said to me at the time that it sounded very, very strange and it was something that needed to be looked at. I got my smear at 18. At that stage you wouldn't have got a smear till you're 21. Now it's 25, which is actually ridiculous, as any woman can take anything at any point in their lives, so it's quite dangerous, you know, for fatal diseases, and even if they're not fatal, women can be very uncomfortable with all sorts of things. My smear came back clear, thankfully. They suggested that I go on the pill. I was put on Microgain in 30. I put on a lot of weight with it. The depression and the hopelessness that I felt every single day wasn't worth it. Even at that, through all that, I still was in like a severe amount of pain. Yes, it maybe stopped the bleeding in between, but I was still in quite severe pain. It just didn't numb it at all. So I had to stay on these for 2 years to give it a chance, and I eventually came off them because I had enough. While this was happening, I was battling depression quite badly and anxiety, which I still have. It's something that just doesn't go away, but at that stage it was quite bad. The mood swings were awful. I was just freaking out at everything, very irritable, and it's sad because it affects everybody in your path. It just ripples through your family. The struggles every month was so bad, but at least I knew I had the other 3 weeks that were okay and I didn't feel that bad. Yes, I had depression and anxiety, but at least there was no actual pain in my body with it. July 2015, me and Stevie got engaged. I was actually on my period that weekend. Obviously it was a surprise and it wasn't meant to work that way. That's just the nature of things. Like, I couldn't even enjoy myself because I was just bleeding so heavily and I wasn't feeling well. And it did destroy part of that day. It was a lovely weekend and I really enjoyed it. It ruined it in a way. July 2016, it was my mother and father's 25th wedding anniversary. We had went down to a local club for another event to which they presented my mother and father with a cake at it too, so you know, it was like killing two birds with one stone. That day my period was over. That was it, finished. I was delighted, as anybody would be. When I woke up the following morning, something felt really strange. I had an awful pressure in my pelvis area. I cannot describe it. When I stood up or sat down, things like that, I could feel like, I felt nearly like organs were moving. It was really uncomfortable. I couldn't go to the toilet for bladder or bowel movements. It was very, very heavy and it was so painful at the same time, and it felt tight. I was concerned because I never felt anything quite like this before, and I imagined that's what appendicitis would be like. So in my head that was something that started to make me quite scared. I had quite severe back pain. It was absolutely throbbing. Even walking and driving, things very, very small and that should be easy to do were quite difficult. It was absolutely brutal. I let it go for a day because I try to let things go and then see how I get on with it. The following morning I woke up, it was just as bad as ever. Then I started to take a completely severe pain that I couldn't even walk. I fell to my knees on the floor upstairs. Stevie had said to me, you know, you need to ring somebody about this because this isn't normal. This time I had dizziness and extreme nausea with it. It was just getting worse by the minute. Something just didn't feel right and I knew something was wrong. I rang Laparoscopy Urgent Care, and for those who don't know what Laparoscopy is, it's like an after hours medical centre. When I got to Laparoscopy, they asked me to do a urine test there and then, so to which I done. The test came back clear, but he did say that he found blood in the urine. He asked me was I on my period, to which I responded no, it was over. He decided to treat me for a urine infection with absolutely no evidence or no cause to do so, because it didn't say I had a urine infection. I had no symptoms of a urine infection. So I took the antibiotics that he prescribed to me, and I was grand, and I assumed maybe he was right, but whatever. A month later, I was in work and this pain came back twice as bad and I could barely move. I asked my boss, I says, can I go to the hospital, which it was in the same town. I went to the hospital and they denied to see me because it wasn't a break or a fracture. To which I went to our local hospital, which was about another 20 minutes away. When I arrived, there wasn't many in, so thankfully I was able to be seen quite quickly. When I went to the room, I was asked, was I pregnant, to which I said no, definitely not. They actually tested me that day 3 times, and I know it's one of them things that they have to do just in case, but I knew I wasn't. He asked me all sorts of questions, try to rule everything out, appendicitis, you name it, everything was asked. Then he approached me and says, you have dysmenorrhea. And I looked at Stevie like, what is dysmenorrhea? I've never heard of this before. Basically, dysmenorrhea is painful periods, severe periods, and it's something that you can Google if you want to. I said that's fine, and he just handed me paracetamol like every other doctor has. Then he proceeded to say to me, you know, you are a woman. These things do happen, you know. And I felt so annoyed and so deflated because I knew that it wasn't just painful periods. I just knew in the back of my head, and I felt so angry when I left that hospital. How do you argue with a doctor? Like, who am I to argue with them over a diagnosis? Every month that went by, this went on and on and on, and it got to a point where it wasn't just happening at the end of my period, it was happening the whole month through. I was taking painkillers every day, which I still am to this day. This happened every single month, and it didn't happen just at the end of my period anymore. I started to stretch out longer until it was just 24/7. It was always there. The symptoms got a lot more severe. Everything just exaggerated massively. In October 2016, I was referred to the gynecologist. Finally got my appointment because it was classed urgent. They discovered that I actually had a cyst, 3.8 centimeter cyst that had actually ruptured, and that's what the pain was. So I had a cyst that had hemorrhaged, and I should have been treated in hospital for it, but instead I was just told that I'm a woman and I have to deal with this. He took my bloods, done a smear, all the routine, and told me that he would see me again in 6 weeks. December came and they checked for the cyst. Cyst was gone, everything seemed to be clear, but he wanted to see me again in the following 6 months because of the pain that I've been experiencing. Over that space of time before I seen the gynecologist was a very bad time for me. I was in a lot of pain, I was feeling very depressed, I didn't want to do anything, I couldn't do anything, I had to cancel plans steady. And over the years I've cancelled quite a few plans because of this, and people probably thinking I'm just being awkward and weird and I don't want to mix with people, and that's complete opposite of the truth. I am quite sociable, I like to talk to people, and I had to cancel because I didn't want to seem like I was off with people. I was getting married in July of 2017 and I still had an appointment. I was promised for the 6 months, like literally on the button, that they'd said to me that we're going to prioritise this and try and make it that we'll get you in as soon as possible to have another chat with you. I had rang them and they kept putting me off until wedding had been over. My honeymoon was destroyed because of this condition. For our honeymoon we went to New York for a week and Los Angeles for a week, which we loved, it was brilliant. But it was destroyed with period pains, to which I had to take a ton of Advil to try and numb it somewhat. I had ran out of my cocodamals, so I hadn't had that extra kick to completely get rid of the pain. My worst day in New York, we were cycling around Central Park, really enjoying it, but I was in a lot of pain the entire time. I started to get worse and worse. I had to get off the bike towards the end and try and push it. I was literally walking 0.1 mile an hour. It was the slowest I have ever walked in my life. I couldn't move. I had to sit under a tree with Stevie for over 2 hours to try and get myself the momentum to get up and go again because I was so tired. So in New York I was under a tree for about 2 hours I was absolutely exhausted, so tired. Painkillers were not working. A lady had actually came up to me and was really nice. I don't know who she is, but thank you to that woman, whoever you are. She actually came up to me and offered to help me over to an ambulance, and she offered to give me water, anything I needed. She was more than helpful, and it was so kind. She was the only person that offered help. September 2017, about 6 weeks after we had come home from honeymoon, my gynecologist had brought in another gynae into the room, as well as a medical student and a nurse. So there was 4 people in the room for this examination. To which my gynecologist had actually, he stood back and he shook his head while looking at the scan on the screen. Then the gynecologist says he wanted to refer me to a specialist because he thinks that there was too much that he could handle. He had also said that he reckoned that it was more complicated than first assumed, to which he had actually said to me, you do have endometriosis, we just have to go in and confirm it now. So on that lead up, after that, I was in quite a lot of pain. Like the symptoms were getting a lot more severe. There was more symptoms than normal, nothing that I had ever encountered before. Everything was just going into a complete meltdown. And this was all through the month. I had bad headaches, extreme back pain, really bad leg pain that I couldn't walk on my left side. I actually had to limp because the pressure of my full foot on the ground caused extreme pain. The mood swings were killer. Pain would make me sick. My skin was even sore to touch everywhere, like I was aching all over. I felt like I had a beating every morning. I was starting to get to a point where I couldn't cope with it any longer. I think it was the start of March 2018. I had actually took unwell at work, and it was discovered after I went to A&E. I took a gastrointestinal bleed, which is a bleed in the intestines, which can be very dangerous. I was so unwell and dizzy, I couldn't actually see straight. So I had a gastrointestinal bleed as well as endometriosis, depression and anxiety, and it was starting to really take its toll on me. Bladder and bowel movements were brutal. They were absolutely severe. I couldn't go at all. It was so bad. I was actually aching all over because I just felt like my body was just absolutely shutting down. Then in April 2018, I had to go and see my new gynecologist. They discovered that I had a 5.8 centimetre cyst, and that it in fact had came back, and that I was actually bleeding into the cyst itself. So instead of the actual blood coming out, the blood was going into itself. So I was actually feeding the cyst. They also told me that the first cyst that had ruptured was not a dermoid cyst, which is the most common cyst for women to get. I had an endometrioma, which is a cyst containing all the old blood of periods that has been trapped behind. So your body just creates them. Sometimes they hemorrhage, sometimes they need removed, and mine's needed removed in this case because it was recurring. June 2018, I ended up on the floor of the shower, couldn't get up, couldn't stand, just the pain just struck me. And that's the scary thing about this condition, is it can just strike at any time, whether I have plans or not. Stevie had to come home, take me to hospital. I ended up spending 2 days in that hospital because I was that unwell. There was still no word of my surgery at that point. The nurses were quite concerned. When they done the scan, the cyst had actually went from 5.8 centimetres up until 8 in a matter of 6 weeks, so it was actually expanding in that space of time, and it potentially could have hemorrhaged, and that's why I was in for 2 days, because the fear was it would hemorrhage, and you can actually get very unwell when they do hemorrhage. A short time after I got home, I had received a letter saying that they had actually booked my surgery, and I had it in a matter of no time, thankfully. I went in for my surgery on July 31st. Surgery was supposed to last 45 minutes, but it ended up being very extensive, and it went to over 2 hours long. Before I went under for theatre, which I've already mentioned in a previous video, I had a nurse actually come up to me while I was lying on the theatre bed waiting to be put under. She had actually said to me, if you have endometriosis, whenever one of the other doctors had suggested it, to which I was very angry, and I couldn't even say anything because she wasn't there when I woke up. After my surgery was over, the specialist came to the end of my bed. My gynecologist explained to me that I had in fact only had one fallopian tube on my left side, and I had my left ovary, but on my right side I had no fallopian tube or ligaments in there because they didn't develop when I was in the womb. But my right ovary was it's like a long kind of shape, long tubular shape, and it was up beside my appendix rather than pushing down to where it should be. As far as pregnancy and things like that, it's just one of them things where we don't know, and they don't really know what's going to happen. It's not something I'm worried about at the minute, but they were very, very sensitive with this matter, and they were more than helpful, and I can't thank them enough. So he explained to me if children was something that me and Stevie had in mind in the future, that I would struggle quite a bit due to my left tube being blocked. Did the surgery help? At the minute I can't really tell, it's still early days, and the problem is that this condition unfortunately comes back. It's like something that just doesn't go away, it just keeps growing and growing and growing, and for the last periods they've been quite heavy, quite sore. I've been exhausted all the time. The healing process has been pretty good. I took a slight infection at the start, but it was nothing major. I got it before it got any worse. Hello everybody, so I'm back home now after the laparoscopy. I'm very tired and sore, but other than that everything went very well, and hopefully the road to recovery will be pretty fast. So I will be posting videos probably very shortly of everything that happened from start to finish, and where we're going next with treatment and things like that. So thanks for listening, bye. There's a lot of stigma around women problems, whether it's endometriosis, polycystic ovaries, all them sorts of things. There's loads of them out there. We need to be able to talk about these things. It's very hard to live every day with a condition like that, or like anything else for that matter. You could have irritable bowel syndrome, you can have fibromyalgia, you can have all these conditions, and just because they're not necessarily fatal doesn't mean that it's not affecting your life and it's making you miserable every day. People have said to me before, you know, you're lucky it's not this. Yes, I am lucky that it's not like something like cancer or things like that, which I initially thought at the start. I thought all this bleeding was cancer. But I'm still feeling like crap. I still feel miserable with this condition. It's not making me feel happy. I'm in pain constantly. I'm still on medication for that because it just won't go away, or I will not function. This is a message for everybody. If you're a woman, please, if you find something is not right, or you don't feel within yourself that you feel well, or there's something concerning you, go and get checked no matter what it is. For everybody else, if you know somebody with any symptoms or any signs, or if you think they're not well in any way, whether it's endometriosis or anything else, please help them, support them, try and get them the help they need, because it's very isolating when you have a condition, because you feel like you're going on and on about it, but it does need to be recognised. I have had quite a long run. It's not over yet, that's only the beginning. I hope one day that I'm pain free, but it's one of them things that we just won't know the answer for. Hysterectomies don't necessarily cure, the pill doesn't cure, surgery doesn't cure, there is no cure. Some women it might work for other women it doesn't work. Personally, I have a lot of symptoms which have went from like the likes of one symptom right up to loads through all the years, and I wrote these down because I can't remember them all. There's that many just in case I forget one. I have PMS, breast pain, brain fog. I get a lot of that, like I'm very forgetful, things like that. I have awful mood swings, anxiety, fatigue and insomnia. I cannot sleep at night. Like, it is so hard for me to get a full night's sleep, and then I'm absolutely exhausted during the day. I'm always cold. That's a big part of it too, surprisingly. I have very bad ovulation pain, cycle pain, I have irregular periods. I even get sore to move, like to even walk. Things get just normal things that you normally can do, or if I sit on too hard of a seat. It's very painful. If I sit at a certain seat for too long, it's painful. My back is very sore. Constipation, nausea, I get shortness of breath, abdominal pain, pain in the lower back when lying down flat, extreme dizziness, low back pain that can go down from my back down into my thigh, into my knee and down to the ankle. So it kind of like radiates from the back to the front, where I have it on the opposite side also. I feel like I'm taking a flu with it. I notice a slight bit of hair loss with it too. Brittle hair, things that aren't normal for me, because like I take care of my hair a lot. Like my hair's been like this for years, the colour, you know, but I noticed that it was more brittle than normal, and it can be brittle right from the root, you know, where the damage is least. I had actually parts of my hair where they were falling out because of the endometriosis, and I did confirm this with the specialist. Never assume you know anybody's pain. Be more respectful towards women and their menstrual cycles, because endometriosis is not fun. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It's something I'll have to deal with the rest of my life, and I've had it for quite a long time. Being dismissed by doctors and other people, especially women, is very degrading, and you feel very alone. I've been told by many doctors that it was in my head. I've been told by people that it's in my head and I'm a woman and I have to get over it and just get on with life. And unfortunately it doesn't work like that. You can't just get on with life whenever it's making everything harder to do. I lost motivation for everything. I lost my interest in hobbies. At the minute, this is the only thing that's keeping me going. If I know I can help other people and it's not hurting me in the process. There's loads of websites on endometriosis, and if you do have it, there are links and there are groups and forums. There's everything online, and go on and you can talk to other people with endometriosis, or even if you just want to read for your own knowledge. Every woman is different. They're all different. All the symptoms are different. People need different medications to treat it. It's one of them things where they're still trying to work out mine. It's took 8 years to diagnose me, and I don't want somebody else to have to wait nearly a decade to get an answer. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I know it's very lengthy. I just wanted to explain my story and tell you exactly what happened, how it happened and when it happened. Endometriosis is part of my life now. I want to help other women feel less alone with this condition. For those who don't have endometriosis, please be respectful of anybody with a condition and don't assume that you know what's actually going on. It's very difficult to live with and we don't need judged. Just because somebody maybe looks okay doesn't mean that they actually are okay. It's the same with depression. You don't assume that somebody is okay just because they look okay. Always ask, always give a hand, always try to help. If any of you have any comments, please leave them below and I'll take a read through them. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please like the video, give it a share. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please attack the subscribe button. For notifications when I post my next video, hit the bell icon. I would be very grateful if you all could support me. Please be respectful and kind towards others. You don't know what anybody's going through. And I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye!